What does perspective mean to you?
When I think about perspective, I'm at the point in my life now where I try not to have one. I listen to my mind, have various perspectives, and what I try to do is not believe in any of them. It's like I don't want one anymore because I find I always have to be against something.
I'm Brenda Sue, and I've been a hairdresser for years, which means I hear a lot of stories. In this podcast, my clients explore a single word in each episode. Not the dictionary meaning, but what the word actually means to them. Real voices, real stories, one word at a time. Welcome to Clips and Conversation. Last week, we talked about the word woke and all the ways a single word can expand once we're awake to everything that's out there. And once you're awake, maybe the next question isn't just what you're seeing, but from where you're seeing it from. And that's this week's guest word, perspective. Before we get into this word, I need to tell you something I caught while editing. It was my oops. In my notebook, I had written questions to ask about perspective. My recording file was the same way. I had labeled it perspective. But on the whiteboard in the salon, the word my clients could actually see, I had written perception. Are they the same? Are they different? Webster's defines the differences this way. Perspective acts as the lens or angle from which you view the world. Perception acts as the interpretation or meaning you assign to what you see. And if I wasn't clear about which one we were talking about, maybe there's something about how easily we blur them in real life. Some of my clients answered thinking perception, and some probably thought about perspective. And some may not have noticed the difference at all. So instead of fixing it, let's listen. Let's hear what they had to say. What does perspective mean to you?
We have a perception of something through our senses, where perspective is more the attitude that we might have about what we see. I think it's interesting because in art, they have perspective, where you learn to draw something that's two-dimensional, that you try to make it three-dimensional. So in our lives, the perspective we take needs to be more dimensional. It needs to be something that gives us a clear view of what we're looking at.
Perception is what we see it as a whole. Perspective is the way I see it versus maybe different from the way you see it. For a snake, I'm terrified, scared of it, yet you find it fascinating, beautiful. I want to hold it,
Right.
whatever.
At the age that I am, I realize that my children and my grandchildren live in a completely different world than I am familiar with. And so rather than complain about it, criticize them for it, it's a matter of adjusting of what their world is like and what I expect their world to be like. It's two different things. And so I've had to change my perception of what the culture is, what the life is like for them, and accept the differences, be patient with those differences, and join in on some of their fun.
And you probably learn a lot.
Perception is reality. So one person's perception is exactly how they see that situation. I mean, in a lot of ways, perception is driving all of us in everything we do. I think perception it's almost maybe gives me a little bit of a judgment. It's like I'm perceiving something, but do I even understand it? I'm perceiving something to be right or wrong or one way or another. And I think there are people in life, and Brenda, you might be one of them, who look at those kinds of situations and look at and give them the benefit of the doubt and look at them in a positive light and they might be doing something completely legitimate. I tend to go the opposite of that, which is I'm not happy about that, but I really like that about other people. And so I think perception is awesome. It can be very dangerous. Certainly, as you continue to perceive something, you continue to change. My perception's changed on so many things: marriage, families, spirituality.
If you're standing side by side with another person and you're looking at the same view and you start talking about it, you always find out that they're looking at something different than you are. I tried to teach my children this. You should be able to see things from other people's perspective. I've seen a lot of confusion, a lot of argument, a lot of mistrust because of perspective. And the fact is, it's not only from the viewpoint but it's also includes your understanding, your background, your knowledge, and the way you feel about it.
Yeah, emotions play a big part in it.
Big part of it.
There's a quote by Anise Nin that kept coming back to me. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are.
I think that that's one of the reasons that communication becomes so important because everybody has different perspectives. If you don't communicate your different perspectives, then you're not understanding each other. It's hard to have a good relationship. There's so many times we don't say what we think. Yeah, true. Yeah, true. We hold it inside and we're angry because we're not willing to talk it through.
I was driving my husband's truck and the steering wheel shook. So my perception was we needed our tires rotated. His was not because we have different perceptions. I was always taught if the steering wheel shakes, you need tire rotation or tire, or alignment.
So did that go over well?
Yes, because if you've been married as long as we have, you learn that you have different perceptions on a lot of things. Men just think differently than women. Women think differently than men. When I experience days that I'm a little more down, I tend to misread people's intentions or maybe think things are more personal than they are, but then at a later time find out it may have had nothing to do with me. It may have had something to do with what that individual was going through. And then my perspective changes because I have more information. And the reverse is true too. When I'm in a positive space, my perspective allows me to step back and say, maybe they're having a rough day.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is texting because people really take things out of I mean, it's too hard.
If you only have your perception, you're always going to think you're right because you don't have anybody spell checking you. Period.
So do you listen to other people's perspectives?
I do.
Did that take a long time to?
It was impossible because I thought, you know what, you're full of baloney and I don't value your input. It was hard for me to accept that everything I thought wasn't correct. And
I bet you've had more rich relationships after that too.
yeah, I did. I actually told my kids I loved them. I always figured that they knew it.
If you don't acknowledge somebody else's feelings, even though you may not at first understand what their perspective is, you can't get anywhere. It's the beginning of communication, especially if there's been a misunderstanding or a difference.
Well, first of all, I think that your perspective is created by what you're around, your childhood, what you're taught, how you are, just your personality. I think if you're not willing to look at other people's perspective, that is probably because the perspective you have serves you or your story, or what you want to do, or your addiction.
What if perspective isn't something we choose as much as something we slowly become aware of?
You get the life that you perceive. So we intentionally lie to ourselves to make the world tolerable. It's hard to be an optimist when you see the world the way it really is.
So how do you feel when somebody else is being positive?
I'm happy you can be positive. I'm a little bit envious, and I keep my mouth shut so I don't destroy your illusion.
You sound like my ex-husband.
Where I really became aware of perspective was with my siblings and how we view our growing up. How did you see that instance that way when I totally saw it another way? No one can see the same thing the same way. Just because we all bring our own experiences, our own history, our own personality to each observation. So even see a movie, read a book, anything like that, you will notice you observe different things at different times in your life.
Why is perspective so important?
It's important to express the fact that what you're saying is your perspective so that they can understand where you're coming from. But it's also important when you're having a conversation with another person to say to them, well, that is your perspective, because we don't see the same things the same way. A lot of times people say their perspective as if it is the truth. It might be the truth for them, but it's not necessarily the truth for you.
I think
if we are to change our perceptions of anything, first of all, we have to have a desire to educate ourselves, to learn more about a situation. And then we must be open to finding new experiences and new definitions to be able to change that perception. And I think also it's important that we understand that others' perceptions are real to them, whether they sound weird or off or whatever. So I think often if we have a perception of something, we find what's called bias confirmation. In other words, we find things that support our theories about ourselves or others that confirm these feelings.
Perspective will be determined by your attitude about life, what you seem to filter out, and what you allow to come into your consciousness. All of us have a different consciousness. We all share one. We all see the same color red, all see the same sidewalk and houses, but we react emotionally to our environments much differently. I have a nephew by a marriage who's 100% disabled, and yet he runs 12 miles a day. He is very optimistic. He's completely disabled according to the government, and he receives a check for that. And yet he keeps fighting and loves the outdoors and is an extreme. He even climbs mountains. And the Tish's perspective is that he will not accept disability. People's attitudes are probably determined by heredity. But you have a certain perception of life, some psychologists say, whether it be pessimistic, realistic, or optimistic, or whatever.
And maybe the real invitation here is to widen the lens.
Your perception of things is how you perceive things being, whether it's accurate or not. There's a saying, 5 years from today, you're going to be the same person you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read, that you listen to. But it's your programming. So you don't change your program, you won't change your perspective or anything unless you have something that impacts your personal education so that you can analyze what you've been thinking and see if that's a good way to think or if you have to change.
Well, perception, I immediately think of Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception. Huxley, of course, was a psychonaut who was influenced by mescaline and influenced the band The Doors. That book is that there's so much information that we can miss every day because we rely on certain shortcuts to understand the world around us. And if we can get in a headspace or change the way we interact with the world, we can bring in so much more insight and understanding of the space we occupy, whether that's in relationships or the natural world or business world. And through getting in a new headspace, I just feel like we can understand so much more. And I think that's what Huxley discovered in his book. The counterculture and mind altering substances and the ability to think outside our cultural upbringing, which, you know, I continue to this day to try to understand what else is there.
Perspective for me is always about thinking a few steps ahead of the situation. I think humans often get wrapped up in the future, which causes anxiety, and they lose the present of what they're actually doing at that moment. Perspective is important, and I'd say context, because if you don't know what you don't know, you obviously don't know it. So while it is good to understand problems in the past that help shape our future, it is important also to understand, again, all of that goodness.
I think it's hard to get a correct perception of our world and people around us when there is a lack of real communication, especially when we can't be sure the communication is untrue. It's important for us to go, I think, to the original source of words or scenarios and not follow what anybody else is saying.
So I teach fourth graders, so they're 9, 10 years old. And the biggest part of our day that where they get to a chance to share their perspective is probably science, because we look at the world around us and we bring in phenomena. What do you observe? What do you wonder about? And that's the start of every lesson. That's a great question. And so I give them a couple minutes to write it down, and then we share. And so everyone gets a chance to say what they observe, what they see in this picture or video or whatever we're doing. Say, okay, what do you wonder about? And so then they get to ask questions. And some of them, I mean, they're 9 and 10, so they get to be a little bit silly, but they also, it's amazing how their questions are generally where we need to take that lesson and take it on the track that I want to go to be able to teach them what's happening in the world around them. So it's good because it's a very different perspective than when we were in school, because I feel like the teacher talked all day and we sat and listened and just took it in. But now teaching is more, okay, share your ideas. Maybe teachers are guiding them more to correct principles or scientific reasons, but they get a chance to share and think and wonder before they're just told the information.
I love perspective. It's such a long word. There's so many parts to it. And I really appreciate when somebody makes me stop and realize, okay, what's the perspective that we need to look at here? Because sometimes perspective on this side is right, but sometimes you need to take a step to another angle and go, oh, this is a better perspective. As the old Native American saying goes, right wing, left wing, it's all the same bird.
After hearing these responses, I realized something. Nobody was wrong. We see through a lens, we stand in a position, and both are shaped by our past, our moods, our fears, our hopes. And whether they were describing perception or perspective, what we're really describing was awareness. The moment we take the seat of observer and notice that the way we're seeing something isn't the only way to see it, that's the shift. But awareness alone isn't always enough. We widen when we're willing to step outside of our own lens. And one of the most powerful ways we do this is by listening. And that's where we're going next episode. Thank you for spending time with me. Stay curious, stay open, and keep the conversation going.